Hi everyone, Rose here. So I am just about to start recording on my reactions to the Goodreads Choice Awards winners. I did a video a while back on my reaction to the finalist and who I ended up choosing for that final round. I'm going to try to see if I can go through this as quickly as possible. I already know the overall winners, but for this, like, I don't know exactly the placement of how everybody did and wanted to actually walk through and see who the first round nominees who got kicked off in terms of the first round, comparatively speaking, among who was nominated. So we're going to do a reaction to that. I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can through this so that this video isn't too long. But considering they asked so many of the categories from previous years, I don't think this is going to take as long as previous years in terms of things, which I'm still bummed out about the fact that they don't have poetry or middle grade or comics or graphic novels or any of the ones in terms of categories that I care about, but it is what it is in terms of things. We're gonna just keep it moving and keep on going. So there was a total of 7,516,397 votes cast, which that's quite a bit actually. We're gonna go ahead and view results. Hopefully my internet is not too spotty. Also mentioning the fact that Goodreads has been very buggy the last several days on certain things. I've been trying to post reviews and it keeps timing me out, and like, just there are just a lot of numerous buggy issues that are going on with Goodreads in general. So just bear with me and we'll try to see if we can get through this as smoothly as possible. Okay, so first category we have is reader's favorite fiction, and the winner of that was Frederick Bachman's My Friends. Now, I have heard of Frederick Bachman for um, several different books beforehand, so this is actually not a surprise to me, considering this is from the author of A Man Called Ove, and also Anxious People, which it's mentioned here that Bachman won second in the category in 2020, but with by a margin of 5 votes, which that was interesting. But yeah, but that is one that I am planning to read, and I've already put it on my TBR because I was very interested in the premise in terms of things. In terms of looking at all the nominees and the vote totals, second place was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, and that was one that had been on my radar in terms of recommendations, but I had not actually read it. But that is interesting that it came in second place with 107,486 votes compared to 167,509 votes for My Friends by Frederick Bachman. The Correspondent got third place by Virginia Evans. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick that one up. I'm probably going to read reviews and see what other folks have said about it, but the premise of it seems interesting to me. But you could tell the drop off in terms of the number of votes between Charlotte McConaughey and Virginia Evans. 107 for 486 to 41,827 votes. But yeah. All right, the names by Florence Knapp got 41,454 votes. Ellen Hildebrand, I had talked about this in my previous video in terms of the Academy. Uh, that was one she co-wrote with her daughter, Shelby Cunningham, and that got 41,354 votes. So yeah, the vote totals following were pretty doggone close, and it was a clear top two this year. So yeah, that's interesting. I am going to probably read All Dark Shore. Whether I'll get to it this year is probably not going to be a thing. Just because I'm so like tight in terms of my reading schedule, in terms of what I'm planning for the end of the year. But do want to probably try to get to that in 2026. See, These Summer Storms, I am very happy to see by Sarah McLean. get into the top 10, and it was technically the sixth, finished sixth place, which that's pretty respectable. I like it. I like seeing that. These Summer Storms is one that I started reading. I have not finished it, but I am very, very close to finishing it. I will definitely finish it this month. I started reading it when the finalists were announced, and I was glad to see that it made it into the final round, but I have not finished it. My reading schedule for 2025 in general has just been off and on. Y'all have no idea. But we're gonna keep it moving. Jojo Moyes finished in seventh place with "We All Live Here." I'm on the fence about Jojo Moyes. I don't know if I'm gonna pick that one up. Like, I'll probably read reviews and see what people say about it, but it's probably not gonna be my cup of tea. Ocean Vuong, I am definitely planning on reading. That finished a respectable eighth place with The Emperor of Gladness, and that was an Oprah's book club pick. I'm not surprised to see Ocean Vuong here, not just for quality of writing, but also because of the word of mouth, especially being a part of Oprah's book club. Wally Lamb is a popular author. Not surprised to see The River is Waiting in ninth place with 33,386 votes. Yeah, the vote totals, like within the top 10 after the first two, are relatively close in terms of things, like in terms of like within the thousands. So like it's interesting to see how that panned out. And then the rounding out the top 10 is The Three Lives of Kate K by Kate Fagan with 25,631 votes. All right. And so that comprises the top 10, so those were the finalists that made it through. Now, these other ones you probably have not seen because they were eliminated in the first round, and you can tell the drop off in the vote totals with respect to what finished in 10th place and what finished in 11th place, which was Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie with Dream Count. Not my cup of tea. I'm like, she's an author who's just not on my reading list anymore in terms of things. I liked one of her books that I read um, several years back. I think it was "We All Should Be Feminists." But then after that, I was just like, nah, I'm not interested in reading her anymore. And I'll just leave it there. But that got 11,094 votes, so it just like barely missed at the time of the first round getting into the final round. Leila Motley, The Girls Who Grew Big. This is also Oprah's book club pick. Um, Teenage mothers in small town Florida Panhandle. This is one I might actually pick up and read to see how what I think about it for myself. So I'll add that to my reading list. You'll probably see me on occasion adding things to my reading list that I have not already from the first round, but yeah. And then Daughters by Ukinyan Braithwaite. Got 10,271 votes. What was the vote total discrepancy between that and the last one? Not very much, about like roughly 500 vote difference between those two. And then yeah, so yeah, it's pretty close in terms of like some of these vote totals. See, Lily King, Heart the Lover, a novel. See, I will probably read reviews of that just to see how that is. 3 Days in June by Ann Tyler. I've never heard of that author actually. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that author. And it's kind of like it has a 3.62 average rating. I'll probably read reviews and see what people think of that. But yeah, you can tell the vote drop off totals is getting into like 9,270 votes for the Lily King novel, 8,216 votes for Ann Tyler's book. Then there's Ian McEwan, 7,320 votes. And then getting into the last bit, A Guardian and the Thief by Megha Majumdar, 5,150 votes. That was also Oprah's book club pick. Okay, that's interesting. All right, I'm putting this on my list because that sounds interesting to me. And then massive drop off from 5,150 votes for A Guardian and Thief to The Loneliest of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai, Booker Prize winning author of The Inheritance of Loss. Interesting. This is one that I have not heard of, and I will probably add that to my list because it sounds interesting. But I'm sad I didn't make it past the first round. And then Jason Mott, I'm very familiar with. I'm not surprised to see him here, but I have not heard a lot of people talk about People Like Us. Let me put that on my reading list because I do like Jason Mott's writing. Okay, so then we'll add it later. I don't know why it's glitching for me. And then the last place is Life and Death and Giants by Ron Rendo. I have not heard of this author or this book, unfortunately. But we're going to move on to the next category, which is historical fiction. All right, so for favorite historical fiction, I'm not surprised to see that Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid won overall. Oh, and to note, let me go back very quickly just to look at fiction in terms of the overall vote total because I forgot to mention that. So for the overall vote total for all the nominees were 638,200 votes total, and my friends won with 167,509 votes. So going back to historical fiction, that the nominees' vote total was 601,522 votes. And of those, Atmosphere got 254,774 votes. That's a big win for Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I'm not surprised because for name recognition alone, Taylor Jenkins Reid has traditionally done well in the Goodreads Choice Awards in terms of name recognition and also the works that she's penned. But let's look and see like who the other nominees were and how they did for historical fiction. And I can't speak to anything because I think for most of these I have not read in this category, and I think I mentioned that um in my previous video when I was going through the final round nominees. But you can see the discrepancy between the first place pick and the second place pick, which was Broken Country by Leslie Hall, which was a Reese's book club pick. I'm wondering if Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid was a book of the month pick. I'm not 100% sure but keeping it moving. Third place was The First Witch of Boston, which I had mentioned I wanted to actually read. It finished a respectable third place considering, but you can tell the discrepancy between second place and third place. 97,131 votes to 31,832 votes. That's a drop off. That's a drop off. So I wonder I wonder in general in terms of things how many books that were historical fiction that did not get nominated under the Goodreads Choice Awards that people um missed out on this year or just didn't even get to these rounds, because I'm wondering how many of those that are more like well known just didn't even get considered in the Goodreads Choice Awards for name recognition. Because normally I would see someone like Kristen Hanna. I think Kristen Hanna was last year with the women, if I remember correctly. If that's correct, I'll put a note on it on this video, but I don't think Kristen Hanna had a release year this year, so it did not get nominated, and the name recognition wasn't there. Which I've read part of The Women. I liked it. It's not an easy read, but it's a very well written, and I'm glad that it won last year. But slight tangent aside, let me move on to the rest of the nominees and winners. With 29,825 votes, the book club for Troublesome Women by Marie Bostwick got fourth place. That is not one that I have heard of, and I'll probably read reviews of that to see whether or not I add it to my TBR. The Secret Book Society is one that I'd have heard after the facts. It got fifth place with 26,208 votes. It's written by Madeline Martin. Yeah. The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner got sixth place with 23,681 votes, and you can tell after third place, like the vote totals are much relatively closer. Moving forward, Isola by Allegra Goodman got 22,871 votes. Good Dirt got eighth place. That's nice to see. I am going to read that by Charmaine Wilkerson. I have not had the opportunity to read that, but it got eighth place with 22,013 votes. Moving on, The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis got 17,548 votes. And then rounding out the top 10, David Baldacci, who has been in this category before. I recognize his name. Got 10th place with 16,196 votes. And then we get a steep drop off into the first round picks that did not make it after this point. So this is everything after 10th place. So Kristen Harmel, The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau. That is not one that I have heard of. 1940s Paris, Decades Old Murder. I will probably read reviews on that one to see whether I'll pick it up or not. And then The Bright Years followed that with 8,176 votes. The Hounding by Kenobi Purvis. I have not heard of that one, honestly. The Crucible meets the Virgin Suicides. What a comp. I'll probably read reviews. It has a pretty average rating here of 3.68. Yeah, that's probably one that I'll probably look and see what other people say about it. Buckeye Patrick Ryan finished up next with 7,529 votes. That one I have not heard of. Junie was one. It is on my radar. I was able to pick this up from my library. I'm reading it right now. And the more I go into it, the more I realize, okay, I understand why it didn't make it past the first round. It got 6,720 votes, and it did relatively better than some of the other ones on this list, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, but I'm hoping to be able to get through this Junie before the end of the year and hopefully give my thoughts about it. But like I can see some of the critiques about why people had trouble with this one. Like just based on having picked it up from my library and like had started going through the audiobook. But not to make this video too long, I'll keep it moving. Next we have Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. That one I have not heard of. The Lilac People I have heard of by Milo Todd. What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. I have not heard of that one. Chanel Cleaton, The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes. The cover of that actually does seem familiar to me. See, Mysterious Book with a Legacy Spanning from the beginning of the 20th century to the present day unites three women in this unforgettable novel from New York Times bestselling author Chanel Cleaton. Interesting. I may read reviews on that. I do remember seeing the cover of this. I don't know people what people in my circles have said about it, but I'll wait and see what other people have said about it. And then A Midi by Nathan Harris. finished last place with 1,614 votes. Not really much for me else for me to say about this. I am glad that Charmaine Wilkerson did decently in this, and I am planning on reading Good Dirt. I am currently reading Junie since I was able to pick that up from my library, but I'm going to try to see if I can finish that before the end of the year and give my thoughts about it. But we are going to move on to mystery and thriller. This was an interesting category. This was an interesting category, but you know what? I am not surprised to see that Holly Jackson won this with 77,149 votes. Considering Holly Jackson's very popular The Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, doing as well as it's doing for this adult debut and name recognition alone, I'm not surprised that it won. I think it also does not surprise me that Frida McFadden got the number two slot. It does surprise me that it was The Tenant that got number two, which is interesting. I have not read it. I have heard things about it. I have not read it though. And then I am not surprised also that Richard Osman got third place with The Impossible Fortune. That is the fifth book in the Thursday Murder Club series. So very not surprising. It's an interesting. It's interesting in terms of how relatively close the vote total was compared to some of the other categories. There were 628,196 votes total in this category, and you can tell Holly Jackson and Frida McFadden were that's compared to some of the other ones. That's pretty close. 77,149 to 70,021 votes. That's better than some of these categories in terms of the finish. And then not too bad for a finish for Richard Osman as well. So that's interesting. And then in fourth place we have Alice Feeney, Beautiful Ugly. Alice Feeney is one of those authors where I'm like, I've been able to pick up the author's work from my library. I tried finishing one of her other ones, and I actually need to and I wasn't able to finish it before I had to return it, so I'm like I kind of really need to pick up Alice Feeney's work again and see if I can finish it off. But I haven't heard much about Beautiful Ugly in terms of the feedback about it. It's got an average rating of 3.6 on Goodreads, so I'll probably read reviews and see what folks have to say about it. But yeah, you can tell um the differences in terms of third place, which 65,953 votes to 50,948 votes. That rounds out the top four. Let's move on. I am very glad that S.A. Cosby finished a respectable seventh place with King of Ashes. I was able to pick that up from the library. I have not finished it yet, unfortunately. But I am planning on reading it and giving my thoughts before the end of the year if I can do it. Jesse Q. Sutanto got sixth place with Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, and I think that's the second in the Vera Wong series. Yeah. So I'm not surprised to see Jesse Q. Sutanto because like I've heard that the author's work is very popular. Geneva Rose, I am not surprised. Finished in the top 10 in fifth place with The Perfect Divorce. Um, I said that Geneva Rose was one of my guilty pleasure finishes from last year. I have not read The Perfect Divorce though. It's very popular at my library. I at least recognize the title, but I have not been able to pick it up. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll see whenever I get the opportunity to be able to read it and give my thoughts about it. Dan Brown, The Secret of Secrets. Dan Brown's not my cup of tea, but I'm not surprised to see him here. I am like considering name recognition. He got eighth place with 40,002 votes. And you can tell between fifth place and eighth place that the vote totals were relatively close. With all four of these, between The Perfect Divorce, Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, King of Ashes, and Dan Brown, all within the 40,000 range. And that's interesting to be able to see that kind of like even split in terms of the total amount of votes. Very, very interesting. Lisa Jewell, Don't Let 'Em In, at ninth place with 37,975 votes. I definitely know Lisa Jewell's work, and I'm not surprised to see it in the top 10. And then Karen Slaughter rounding out the top 10 with 34,658 votes. We are all guilty here. I have not had the opportunity to pick that one up. I do like Karen Slaughter's work, though. I do. I do. Moving on. So we're gonna get into the ones that didn't make it past the first round. Frida McFadden, The Cat Crash. So Frida McFadden had multiple books nominated in this category, and it's like I hesitate to make the comparison, but Frida McFadden releases so many different books. It's like basically James Patterson in a different thing. Like just so many different books, and basically if you've read Frida McFadden, you know like her books are like either hit or miss. Sometimes they work with people, sometimes they don't in terms of the thrill. But like I have to respect the frequency of being able to see so many of her works in terms of things. It's just like one story after another after another after another. I have not read The Crash. I was interested in reading the Crash, and I saw it from on Libby from my library, but I have not had the opportunity to read it. So we're gonna see how I react to that. Freida McFadden, like I can usually get through her books relatively quickly. I'm probably gonna try The Tenant before I try The Crash, but we'll see. But it was one of the higher picks for the first round with 16,868 votes. And you can tell the vote discrepancy between 10th place and 11th place, that in terms of this missing out. Moving on, Ashley Flowers, The Missing Half. I've at least seen the cover of The Missing Half. I don't know what it's about. I may try to see if I can read reviews on that and see what people think about it. But let me see. Two women haunted by their sisters' unresolved disappearances band together in this captivating mystery of All Good People Here. Yeah, I remember All Good People Here. That is on my TBR, but I have not read it yet. Moving on, another Freida McFadden book. This is what I'm saying. Freida McFadden had so many books nominated. I think Goodreads needs to implement some kind of rule where the same author doesn't get nominated like three times. Because not only does it split the vote in terms of these respective books, but also it's just like you need other people to be nominated and recognized for their work too. Like not just one author dominating the same category. And this has been said before, even in the romance category, when Coho was being nominated continuously, like in terms of multiple books. I'm like, there's got to be something that changes. There has to be something that changes. But Freida McFadden's The Intruder, that one I have not heard of. But it got 14,537 votes. Heartwood by Amity Gage. I have not heard of that one. 13,673 votes. Julie Clark, I have not heard of. 13,101 votes. I might look at it. Like for some of these, I'm probably just gonna look at the reviews and see if I want to add them to my TBR later. Not right now though. Jillian McAllister, I have heard of, and I have seen famous last words around. I think the last time I was in my library, I saw it being one of the featured titles for mystery and thriller. It got 11,000 258 votes. I'm probably just going to go ahead and add that to my TBR because I do remember it being a featured title, and I've seen it in my library. Now, when I'll get to it, I have no idea. Moving on to the last part of this category, John Mars. I've seen his name before. You Killed Me First got 9,594 votes. Stacey Willingham, I have definitely heard of. Forget Me Not, I have not heard of this particular book though. Got 8,845 votes. Reese Witherspoon and Harlan Coben, I did not know that they wrote a book together. That is something, but it got 7,280 votes. So that's a testament to saying that even name recognition, like among like Harlan Coben is not an old not a new name in the mystery thriller category. Like he has written a lot, but I did not realize that he wrote a book with Reese Witherspoon this year and that it came out. So I'll have to look at reviews on that one. Let's see what the. Ooh, okay. So the average rating is 3.75. Yeah, I'll read reviews of that and see what other people think. The last one in this category, John Grisham, The Widow. I did not even know that John Grisham had a new book out this year, but it got 6,586 votes. So again, John Grisham has been in the business for a while. But just I really have not heard that much about his newer work being in contention with others. So that rounds up the mystery thriller category. Not really much else to say here. I'm curious enough to read Holly Jackson's adult debut just to see what she did with it. I am aware of certain controversies that are around with her without going into it or making this video longer than it needs to be, but I am planning on reading Not Quite Dead Yet. I just don't know when that'll be. And it is very popular in my library. Like the last time I was in my library, I was like, okay, I saw Holly Jackson um book featured like quite heavily. But it gets me that Frida McFadden was nominated 3 times in this category across the different rounds, and I'm like, I can understand maybe one or two, but three, nah. Like, there's got to be some kind of cap that Goodreads in some way. I don't know how they would do it, but there's got to be a cap to allow more people to have the opportunity to have their work recognized and be nominated instead of just having one author dominate the category. But moving on to romance. I'm not even I think you can guess who won romance this year. It was Emily Henry with Great Big Beautiful Lie. And it was not even a competition, y'all. Like, so this was one of the categories that had the most vote total, highest vote total, with 798,132 votes total. And of those, Big Beautiful Life got 117,054 votes. Very clear winner here. Very, very clear winner here. I already have this as an audiobook. I think Julia Whalen is still not if I'm correct, I think Julia Whalen is still narrating it. If I'm wrong, I'll put a note on this video for your reference in terms of things, but it's already in my library and it's already in my personal library and I'm going to read it via audiobook. But yeah, I'm not surprised to see that it won. I'm not surprised to see Abby Jimenez, considering how popular this author is. For Say You'll Remember Me being second place with 93,945 votes. But I have heard mixed opinions about Say You'll Remember Me. I've heard it's not Abby Jimenez's best work. And like, just to kind of like say it like that. But I have not read I've read excerpts of her work. I've not read her work yet to be able to reflect on it, but that's one I'll probably just read the reviews on and see if I want to read it later. It doesn't really like strike me, but it is what it is. I am not surprised to see Carly Fortune on here with One Golden Summer. I am not surprised at all, and I actually do own One Golden Summer. That is one that I'm planning on reading. And look at how close the vote total between these two, between second and third place was. That, holy moly, that was close. 93,945 votes to 93,098 votes. Very, very close considering. So like like you can see like a clear distinction in the top three here, and none of these names are surprising in terms of how popular they are. Allie Hazelwood, I am not surprised to see on this list. I am surprised that it is deep in though. With 86,798 votes, I'm not personally interested in reading deep, and it would normally be up my alley. It would normally be up my alley because, like, in terms of the premise, a competitive diver and ace swimmer jump into forbidden waters in the steamy college romance from New York Times, bestselling author of The Love Hypothesis. But knowing what I know about Ellie Hazelwood's writing and certain other things, it is probably not going to be my cup of tea. The premise has me, though. The premise has me though. Moving on, number five, the favorites. Now, the favorites is about competitive Olympic skating, and that had me from like the jump in terms of things. I think y'all saw my live reaction on the Goodreads finalist video, but that is one I am planning on reading, and I'm happy that it did get fifth place for what I've heard about it in terms of things. It got 57,653 votes, which is quite a steep drop off from the top four, but still that's respectable. I don't understand why so many people are voting for Liz Tom for it. I'm like, my word, there are better authors. There are better authors, y'all. The less I say about, the better. Various controversies and other things, notwithstanding, like, just there's better authors than Liz Tom Ford, y'all. Really, really, just really. I don't understand it. This book, which I think is, yeah, the fifth book in this respective series, got 56,688 votes. Moving forward, then there's First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, 53,979 votes. That is on my reading list. I may look at what other reviewers are talking about for this respective book, but yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. I am definitely not reading Scythe and Sparrow. That is the third book in the Ruinous Love trilogy by Bryn Weaver. That got eighth place with 44,765 votes. Moving on to ninth and 10th place, Wildside by Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver's Wildside is the third book in the Rose Hill series. And then King of Envy by Anna Huang. That is the fifth book in the Kings of Sin series, and it got 10th place with 38,992 votes. So that rounds out the top 10. Now we get into the first round picks that didn't make it into the final round. So moving on, Allie Hazelwood got nominated again with Problematic Summer Romance. I've heard so many people did not like Problematic Summer Romance. So that's not one that I'm going to be reading at all. It got 17,738 votes. I just know that's not going to be my cup of tea based on what I've heard about it. Moving on with the Gingerbread Bakery, which is, I think, like that kind of like cozy romance series from what I've heard. It is the fifth book in the Dream Harbor series by Lori Gilmore. It got 17,019 votes. Now, Let me talk about Kennedy Ryan for a second because Kennedy Ryan didn't make it out of the first round. I am disappointed that Kennedy Ryan did not make it into the final round, but I'm not surprised given how split people were about Hendrix's story. And I appreciate it can't get enough. Like I do need to do a formal reflection, a formal review on my channel for Can't Get Enough. I read it this year, but people like, as wonderful as it was to be able to read about Hendrix, like dealing with a number of different issues, including her mom suffering from like dementia related illness. I think it was Alzheimer's, if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, I'll put a note on the video. But seeing that struggle and just seeing, like, Hendrix trying to go through the motions of that, like the women's fiction aspect of it was decent, and there were different things that, like, it worked through that were fulfilling to be able to read about, even though it was hard to read about them. But the actual romance, some pieces of the romance I did like. Hendrix falls in love with a billionaire, but considering some of the things in it where it dealt with the billionaire aspects of it, and then other inclusions in it in terms of things, including the AI bit, which I very much did not like that part in that book, and I'll talk about it in my review. I can understand that people were split in terms of reacting to Hendrix's story, comparatively speaking, in the third book of the Skyland series. So, like, saying that, I'm not surprised to see that it finished the way that it did, because there were mixed reactions about it. I still think my favorite in the Skyland series was This Could Be Us, and I think Soledad's story was my favorite out of the three. But yeah, I'm not surprised Can't Get Enough didn't finish higher than what it did. Thinking about it and actually and reflecting on about it honestly. So that being said, moving on. If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia, I have not heard of this one. It got 12,763 votes. Till Summer Do Us Part by Megan Quinn got 12,085 votes. Bryn Weaver Tourist Season got 11,217 votes. I have not heard of that one. Sarah Adams, I have not heard of this one either. Beg, Borrow, Steal, I got 10,892 votes. Lucy's Score, I have heard of and have seen. Story of My Life, like, I've seen this cover and I've heard people talk about it. It got 8,254 votes. Spiral, I have absolutely heard of as well. By Bal Cabra. It is the second book in the Off the Ice series. It got 4,803 votes. And then Lauren Asher's Love Arranged got 3,026 votes to round out the category, which is the third book in the Lakefront Billionaire series. But yeah, this rounds out the romance. I am pretty disappointed that there were not other authors that were not recognized in the romance category this year. It's usually some of the same names. I would really love to be able to see other people get their flowers in this category. I really do, because I feel like it's just it feels like there are more people who should be recognized that are doing the thing. And like, and I really 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 wish that Goodreads would include mass market paperbacks and Harlequin and other authors that are that have been doing their thing. There should be other authors that should be featured in this, but it's Goodreads, so it is what it is. Moving on to Romantasy. And this is a category where it's just like, I knew who was going to win from the very beginning. Onyx Storm, I'm not even going to waste time. I am not even going to waste time on this. But you can say this was also one of the most voted on categories with 198,208 votes total. And of those 298,565 votes went to Onyx Storm. Everybody else got trounced. Everybody else got trounced. I'm like, it's not even a surprise in terms of things. I'm personally not interested in reading the Fourth Wing series. It's not my cup of tea. I already know that it's not going to be my cup of tea. It's even on my not my cup of tea shelf. So I'm not gonna even spend too much time on that. I am surprised about Alchemize, and I'll tell you the reason why, because this was one that I had not heard of, and I did not realize that it was repurposed fan fiction, which I feel a certain type of way about. I Yeah, like in terms of between there's so many authors who are being picked up for repurposed fan fiction, and like it just feels it feels a bit alarming in some ways in terms of things. It's just like, like even with the controversy with Julie Soto, who was nominated in some of these categories in terms of things. I'm glad that Julie Soto did not win. But just seeing the repurposed fan fiction, and like just seeing I feel ways about P2P fiction, like in terms of things, and it being marketed and the ethics behind that. I've talked about it on Goodreads before. I've talked about it in other circles before. I don't know if I'm going to revisit that topic for the channel just to be able to talk about it at length in terms of how I feel about the ethical, like a lot of ethical violations it comes into, but maybe later. Maybe later I'll put a pin in it. But Alchemist got 86,230 votes, so you can tell there's a big gap between first and second place here. Third place is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I am planning on reading that. I was able to pick it up from my local library on audio. I'll probably read that. It's probably not going to be by the end of this year. It may be sometime in 2026, but I am planning on reading that. And I love the cover. I really do love the cover. Um, Fourth place, and you can tell the difference between third place and fourth place in terms of the vote totals. Night and Moth got 69,786 votes, while the follow-up to Bride, which is Mate by Allie Hazelwood, got 56,473 votes. Not really spending too much time on that, because I'm not surprised to see Allie Hazelwood like in romance. And like to be fair, Bride is romantasy, but yeah, and it's relatively popular, so I'm not surprised to see it in the top four. Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I talked about that on the channel. I've read Devney Perry before. I've not read Devney Perry's romantasy before. So I am probably going to read Shield of Sparrows probably sometime in 2026. We'll see how that goes. Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I am very, very glad that it got sixth place. That's great to see, and you can tell that I voted for it. But it got 52,188 votes. I was not able to pick up a copy of it before the end of the final round voting. So I'll probably end up reading that in 2026 and giving my thoughts about that. Accomplice to the Villain, evidently very popular romantasy series. I think it's the third installment to the Assistant to the Villain series. I'm definitely not reading that. It's not my cup of tea. But it got 40,916 votes for seventh place. See, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales is the third book in the Emily Wilde series. Got eighth place with 30,460 votes. See, Enchantra by Kaylee Smith, got 22,884 votes for ninth place, and then Rebecca Ross, Wild Reverence got 10th place with 21,201 votes. All right. So that rounds out the top 10. Now we're coming into some of the other books that didn't make it past the first round. You can tell the difference between the vote total here. Silver Elite by Danny Francis. I've heard about Silver Elite from a lot of people. It is not my cup of tea. I am not going to read that series, but it got 9,881 votes. The Carissa Broadbent, I've seen and heard about this series as well. I think it is, yeah, it's the third book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, Songbird and the Heartstone. It got 9,166 votes. Dire Bound by Sable Sorensen. I've seen the cover and I think I've heard of the author, but I don't know much about that series. It got 8,263 votes. Bridget Knightley, The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, got 7,251 votes. That's not one that I've heard of. Bonds of Hercules, I've heard a lot of things about, a lot of critical critique. I heard it was not good. I've heard it was not good, so I widely skipped it. So I think I'm gonna add that to my not my cup of tea list. I thought I had added it. I did not. I know I'm definitely not reading that. I know I'm definitely not reading that. But Bonza Hercules got 6,570 votes. Julie Soto, as I mentioned before, is like repurposed Harry Potter fanfic author and has been promoting her work as Hermione fanfic in terms of things. The ethics in that is just not cool with me at all. But it got 6,304 votes. She clearly has some fans, but no, I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them, and I will not be reading her work without going into too much detail about that. The less I say about it, the better. Moving on to Sulin Tan, it's Immortal. Let's see, got 6,208 votes. I have heard of this one. I have seen it around. I've seen it in my local library as well as the local bookstore the last time I was there. So I've seen this around. I'm probably going to read reviews about it and decide whether or not I'm going to pick that up. But it got 6,208 votes. Briar Bolin, that's not one that I've heard of. On Wings of Blood, 3,655 votes. The Wrath of the Fallen by Amber V. Nicole is the fourth book in the Gods and Monsters series. I've not heard of that one. It got 3,332 votes. And then lastly, Our Vicious Odes by Annie Davenport. I have heard of this. I've heard some of the buzz about this. It got 2,515 votes. I actually thought that it would finish a little bit higher. I did not know if it was going to get past the first round. I like my gut was saying that like it probably wouldn't, but I thought it would have more votes than this, but it is what it is. I think Our Vicious Oats is on Kindle Unlimited. I have not decided whether or not I'm going to pick that up. My answer is probably leaning towards no because it doesn't seem like it'd be my cup of tea from the excerpts that I've read from it. But I've at least heard of Our Vicious Oats in terms of like some of the my circles talking about it in terms of things. I just don't know if it's going to be my cup of tea or if it's something that I would really want to read. But it is one of the few books on this list that is penned by a black author. So I'm like, I want to give people a try, but if the excerpts are not pulling me, it's not pulling me. And that's my honest assessment on that. But we'll see. I am very prone to change my mind. I'm very prone to change my mind. Let's move on to fantasy. So this is a very interesting development in terms of things. I knew that V. Schwab would possibly take this category in terms of popularity. I did not know if it would be like a certainty for it, especially considering the other nominees that are in this category, as you'll see. But it got 102,408 votes out of a total of 521,797 votes. So you can tell there were less people who voted in this category than the previous two categories, which is interesting. But romance is big, like in the industry in terms of things. So of course, like romance and romantasy would have more vote totals in terms of things. But yeah, without spending too much time on that. But Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil won over the next two, which was very interesting in terms of the total split. I would have thought that both R.F. Kuang and Brandon Sanderson would have gotten more votes than this, but it is interesting to see how it split. So R.F. Kuang released Catabasis. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but the R.F. Kuang's work got 87,125 votes. And then Brandon Sanderson with Wind and Truth, which is the fifth book in the Stormlight Archive series, got 50,158 votes. I would have thought Brandon Sanderson would finish higher than third place, just based on like like word of mouth. But then again, I've heard mixed opinions about like latter books in the Stormlight Archive series. I have not read up to that point. I think I started reading the first book and I had to return it to my library. And I did not finish, unfortunately did not finish it because I had to return it to my library. I do have a copy of the first book of this series in my collection though, and I'm probably going to see it like when I have the opportunity to be able to read it, I'll read it and try to see if I can catch up. But yeah, um it's interesting to see the vote total among the top three here in terms of things. I am planning on reading Catabasis when I have the opportunity to do so as well. That I may check out of my library because I've heard mixed opinions about it. I've heard a lot of people didn't love it as much as Yellowface or Babel, from what I've heard. Fourth place, Stephanie Garber is definitely not a new name to me. Like I know of Stephanie Garber's YA work. I do not. I think Alchemy of Secrets is one of her adult works. It is the first in a series. It got 47,888 votes. I still haven't decided whether or not I'm going to pick that one up yet. I may read more reviews in terms of how people thought about that one. But we'll see. We'll see. The Sirens by Amelia Hart. I know about that one. 32,082 votes to finish in fifth place. James Islington, The Strength of the Few, which is the sequel to The Will of the Many, if I remember correctly, yeah. Got 30,007 votes, which that's pretty respectable for sixth place. The Devils by Joe Abercrombie got a respectable seventh place with 27,429 votes. Water Moon by, let's see, Samantha Soto Yamba got 25,469 votes. That's respectable for eighth place. The Raven Scholar. I've heard so many people recommend the Raven Scholar to me, so that is definitely getting read by Antonia Hodgson. Got 24,050 votes. It is on my TBR. I am probably not going to get to it this year. I'll probably end up getting to it next year. The River Has Roots, I am almost done with, and I'm glad that it finished up in the top 10 with 23,389 votes. Like, I think it should have placed higher, obviously, because I read it and I got an arc of it, and I really like it. I'm almost done with it. Probably by the time this video goes up, I'll probably have finished. But I'm glad that it got in the top 10. I'm glad that I got in the top 10. And then just barely missing the first round cutoff, which I'm sad to see that Travis Baldry's Brigands and Bread Knives didn't make the top 10. But you know what? I'm still planning on reading it. It is a sequel to Legends and Latte, so it's not a prequel, it's a direct sequel from what I've heard. And I've heard the people that picked it up this year actually really did enjoy it because there was a lot of plot happening, a lot of plot happening. Um, and like I enjoyed Legends and Lattes. I still need to read the prequel to that, and I've heard that the sequel to Legends of Lattes actually follows one of the characters that was from the prequel. So I need to read the prequel first, and then I need to read Brigands and Bread Knives, and that will be on the list. I probably won't be able to get to it until 2026, unfortunately, though. Moving on, let's see. This is A Drop of Corruption, which is the second book in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. I've not heard of this one, by Robert Jackson Bennett. Got 9,520 four votes. T. Kingfisher, I have definitely heard of, and I've heard actually pretty decent opinions about Hemlock and Silver. People who picked it up really enjoyed it. I have not had the opportunity to pick it up yet, though, but it got 9,516 votes. I'm very surprised that T. Kingfisher did not get into the final round this year. But I don't know. Like I'll see if I can pick that up from my local library when I have the opportunity to do so. I do enjoy T. Kingfisher's work though. Moving on to the next book, Resistance of Witches, Morgan Ryan. That got 8,227 votes. The Everlasting, I do know of Alex E. Haro. Um got 8,019 votes. Joe Hill got 7,738 votes. I did not know that Joe Hill had a release this year. That goes to show you how I've been living under a rock. Let's see, what is this one about? I'll probably read that though. I will probably read that though. I've told multiple people before that I don't think very many people were checking for Holly Black's follow up to the Book of Night because I've heard very little about it, but it got 7,055 votes, so there are people who were checking for it this year, but I'm very surprised that it was even nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards because so many people had mixed opinions about Book of Night in general. Again, I'm probably gonna I'm curious enough to be able to pick it up, but it's probably gonna be a library read, and it's probably not gonna be until 2026 until I can pick it up. But yeah, I had very mixed opinions about Book of Night, and I wish it had landed better because I love urban fantasy. Urban fantasy is like my bread and butter, but I was disappointed in terms of some of the things that Book of Night did, and it did not sit with me well. It did not sit with me well. Hopefully, Thief of Night is better. We'll see. Marie Lu, Red City. This is the first an adult book. Like I know of Marie Lu from the author's YA books. This is an adult fantasy book from her. Is part of the a new series called The New Alchemist. I have not heard too much about the series, honestly. And it got 5,135 votes, so there are people who evidently liked it, but I have not heard too much about it. I'll probably see like what other people say about it to decide whether or not I'm going to pick it up, but we'll see. The Society of Unknowable Objects by Gareth Brown got 4,519 votes. And then Emily Tesh, who I have heard of and who is on my TBR, and I've heard people like the Incandescent, but unfortunately it only got 2,482 votes. For it to be nominated, that is let's see like what the overall score was for this 3.98, and it got 8,166 ratings on Goodreads. But yeah, I'll probably pick that up in 2026 if I can do so. I'll probably pick it up from my library, but I've heard the few people that I've heard from about this particular book actually really liked it. So it is on my TBR, and I am planning on reading it. All right, so I think there's not much else for me to say about this category. we're going to move on to science fiction. So we're going to move on to science fiction. And this one was the one that surprised me the most. But after I heard a lot of people talk about the compound, I was like, okay, I kind of understand why there were some people who gravitated towards the story, but I don't know if science fiction was basically the best category it could have been put in. But it won with 45,287 votes. And you can tell the vote drop off for this category, comparatively speaking. The total amount of people who voted on in this was 289,933 votes. So definitely not on the level of romance or romantasy, which is kind of a bummer because I love sci-fi. In terms of things, that's like one of my bread and butter genres. But I'm kind of not surprised because a lot of the nominees in this are really literary sci-fi and not really like space opera or other types of sci-fi, so it's very limited. And maybe that might have played into why like a lot of people did not vote in this category, comparatively speaking. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. But we're going to move on in terms of things. So I am curious enough to read The Compound, and I had mentioned that in my previous video, so I'm going to keep it moving. The Book of Lost Hours finished in second place with 40,446 votes. Nikki Ehrlich's The Poppy Fields finished in third with 37,483 votes. Nnedi Okorafor, Death of the Author. As I mentioned, I'm not interested in reading anything that Nnedi Okorafor writes, but it got fourth place with 30,919 votes. So she's a popular author, but less I say the better. Dream Hotel by Leila Lalami got 21,986 votes for fifth place. Of Monsters and Mainframes, I definitely want to read, and that got a respectable sixth place with 20,709 votes. John Scalzi, who I thought would finish a little bit higher than this, but I'm glad that he finished in the top 10, got 17,184 votes with When the Mood Hits Your Eye. And I think John Scalzi was actually nominated twice in this category, which, as I said before, I feel like, like there really should be a cap in terms of how many authors are nominated for the same category in the same year, like for uncertain things. I hope that Goodreads changes it. It's probably not likely to happen, but I hope Goodreads modifies it in some way, like for these awards in future things. We'll see. Automatic Noodle. Someone had actually told me, like, Rose, you should probably read this. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on my reading list now. But it got eighth place with 15,233 votes. And then for ninth place, I think we've been here before. This was another one that someone had said, Rose, I think you would enjoy this. Put this on your list. I'm gonna put that on my want to read list. But it got ninth place with 14,182 votes. And then Adrian Tchaikovsky, who is a regular in the sci-fi space in terms of things. I'm not surprised to see him here. I got 10th place with 12,392 votes. I haven't heard too much about this particular book specifically. I'm going to probably read some reviews on it before I decide whether or not I want to pick it up. But yeah, Adrian Tchaikovsky is the author of the Children in Time. I think it's called the Children in Time series. I know the book is called Children in Time, but yeah. Moving on, and these are all the following I'm going to list are all picks that are did not make it past the first round. These memories do not belong to us by Yiming Ma. Got 5,768 votes. I have that on my TBR already. The Memory Collectors by Tete Meserve got 4,536 votes. The Merge by Grace Walker got 3,919 votes. Makana Yamamoto's Hamajang Luck got 3,651 votes. Local Heavens, which I did vote for in the first round, but it didn't make it. This is the one where it's GLBTQ, is like a lesbian version of The Great Gatsby and Cyberpunk. Got 3,323 votes. You would think with like, like the premise of it, like for AM for Jada that it would have finished higher, but unfortunately it did not. I am still planning on reading that. I haven't, that is an arc. I have not had the opportunity to be able to pick it up, but I am going to try to see if I can pick it up before the end of the year because like the premise is absolutely my cup of tea. It is absolutely something that I would love to read, but I have not had the opportunity to do so yet. But that is on the TBR. I'm going to try to see if I can finish it before the end of the year. If not, very beginning of 2026. Moving on to the next book, which, like I said, John Scalzi was nominated twice. The Shattering Peace got 2,942 votes. That is the seventh book in the Old Man's War series. It kind of doesn't surprise me that it did not make it past the first round just because it is the seventh book in that respective series. So, like, a lot of people may not have read a lot into have not read into Old Man's War, or probably didn't realize that the seventh book came out this year. In terms of things, like it's one of the books that are further along in the series, so I'm not surprised it didn't make it past the first round. But um, yeah, but it did come out this year. I am planning on I'll probably read quite a bit of John Scalzi's work as I have the opportunity to do so and be able to, because I don't think I've done a formal review of any of John Scalzi's work on the channel before, which feels criminal in some ways, especially since I do like his writing. But I am planning on reading more of his work and reviewing it for the channel. We'll see how my time pans out. Unfortunately, I have not had a lot of time in 2025. Moving on to the next book, The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace, got 2,857 votes. I have not heard of that one. I have heard of Yumi Katase's Salt Crop. That got 2,850 votes. I am planning on reading that probably sometime next year. It won't be this year, unfortunately. Dissolution by Nicholas Bench. I have not heard of the author or book, but it got 2,179 votes. And then the last one, rounding out the sci-fi category, is Luminous, a novel by Sylvia Park. It got 2,087 votes. So yeah. But it just feels disappointing that there isn't more range in the sci-fi category, especially with respect to releases this year. There's just a lot of lacking, like space operas and just other science fiction titles other than literary science fiction. Not that I'm criticizing literary science fiction, because I love all science fiction, like speculative and what have you. But it just feels like the Goodreads Choice Awards has more titles that feel like a monolith in terms of the genre, and it is way more than just literary sci-fi. I feel like there could be a lot more range of nominees in terms of this category, which that feels disappointing to me because of how much range there is in science fiction in terms of things, and we absolutely need more representation. We absolutely need more representation than just some of the bigger name authors. We need more recognition in terms of some of the like specific subgenres within science fiction. So I would like to be able to see more from that. I don't know how that would be reflected in a Goodreads category in terms of things, but it could be a suggestion down the line in terms of saying, hey, maybe think about having like like a more specific, instead of just having literary science fiction, having more specific subgenres of this genre. But I mean, you did it for Romantasy. Just saying, you did it for Romantasy. It doesn't make sense that you can't do it for something like sci-fi. I'm just saying, just my opinion. Horror had like a very good range of nominees, and like the past several years, I've been impressed in terms of the range that has been offered in terms of the nominees for horror. But it may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm glad that someone else other than Stephen King won for this year. So it was Grady Hendrix. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls won with 59,603 votes. Um, and it was out of a total of 352,392 votes total. Stephen King actually wasn't that far behind Grady, though, in terms of the vote total. He got for Never Flinch 57,375 votes, and is the fourth in the Holly Gibney series. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, I think, is a standalone, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yeah. My choice for this one, I was hoping that Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones would take it. It got a respectable third place. I'm not complaining. Third place is not bad at all. Third place is not bad at all in terms of things. I do want to fully read this. Like, I started Buffalo Hunter Hunter because I did pick it up from my library, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it before the end of the year. I'm going to try to, though. It got 39,229 votes total in third place, and you can tell like there's a gap between the first two places versus the third and fourth place in terms of things. Stephen King got 57,375 votes. Then there was the drop off with Stephen Graham Jones's Buffalo Hunter Hunter with 39,229 votes. Sylvia Moreno Garcia did very respectively in this category with The Bewitching, but I have not heard a lot about people talking about The Bewitching enough, unfortunately. But it got fourth place with 34,740 votes. I'm happy for her on that. I'm happy for her on that. Like, interesting as I have not had the opportunity to read The Bewitching yet, but that is on my TBR. That is absolutely on my TBR. I do like Sylvia Moreno Garcia's work overall in terms of things. I like some of her work has been hit and miss with me, but like I generally like her work. And I was also very glad to see Rachel Harrison's Play Nice. Like, Rachel Harrison is another author that I greatly respect in terms of horror. Got 31,285 votes and placed in fifth, which that's a great finish. Great finish. I'm happy for Rachel Harrison. Moving on to sixth place is Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zing by Kylie Lee Baker. I think I put that on my TBR last video, and so like I definitely want to read that at some point. Hungerstone by Kat Dunn got seventh place with 18,190 votes. And that's quite a steep drop off, like between Rachel Harrison, which was 31,285 votes. There was a drop off with Bat Eater and Nothing Needs for Cora Zing with 20,936 votes, and then Hungerstone got 18,190 votes. So just noting the differences between fifth place, sixth place, and seventh place. We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad, which is a sequel to Bunny, which very controversial title. Got 16,896 votes, but it finished in eighth place. Isabel Cañas, The Possession of Alba Diaz, got 15,178 votes. And then rounding out the top 10, The Lamb by Lucy Rose got 15,159 votes. Then we get to the first round picks that did not make it into the final round. I have not heard of this one, but The Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy got 6,873 votes. What is this one about, I wonder? Let's see. One night, just a struggling actress finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. Oh my word. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, horrifying incidents of butchery follow them. First, Jess thinks she understands what they're up against, but she's about to learn there's more to these surreal and grisly events than she could have ever imagined. It got a 4.12 average rating. That feels like something that I would read, actually. Well, let's try it. I'm putting it on my TBR. put it on my TBR. I have never heard of it though. I've never heard of it, but it does feel like a premise that I would read. Um, Next is Andrew Joseph Weiss, You Weren't Meant to Be Human. I was bummed that that didn't make it past the first round because I know Andrew Joseph White is well known for um, their YA books in terms of things, and the comp for this one is Alien Meets Midsummer, and it's the author's debut novel, which that is interesting. It's already on my TBR. I am definitely planning on reading it. I just not have not had the chance to pick it up yet, unfortunately. But it is on the TBR. I really want to read that. Moving on, Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen got 5,895 votes. I have not heard of that one. I'll probably look at reviews of that one and see whether or not I would add it to my TBR. The Haunting of Payne's Hollow by Kelly Armstrong. I am very, very familiar with Kelly Armstrong because Kelly Armstrong has had very popular series in the YA space. So this was one that I clearly did not realize that was released this year. I'll probably read reviews to see how people respond to it, but it got 4,782 votes. Chuck Tingle, Chuck Tingle. Oh, Tingle is fun in terms of things, but this was another one that I was surprised it didn't make past the first round, but it's Lucky Day. It got 4,600 votes. Then Darcy Coates. Darcy Coates is another one. Like usually Darcy Coates does has name recognition, so I'm surprised that how bad things can get didn't make it past the first round, but it got 4,255 votes. I have not read that one, but it is on my TBR, as is Chuck Tingle's Lucky Day, that is already on my TBR. And then there's Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. Uh, got 3,814 votes. What is this one about? What if you could enter the mind of the person you love the most? And this is horror. This sounds like something that I would read, but I'm probably gonna read reviews and see like how others reacted to that one. And then What Hunger? I've heard a lot of people talk about the cover of this one in terms of things, in terms of its controversy, but What Hunger is by Catherine Dang, and it got 3,672 votes. Coffin Moon by Keith Rawson. I've not heard of that one. Got 1,922 votes. And then lastly, Breathe In, Bleed Out by Brian McAuley. That has kind of like a pulpy horror cover. It's got 1,223 votes to be last place in the horror category. I have not heard of that one. I probably would read reviews of that to see whether or not I add it to my TBR. But yeah, that's the horror category. Like horror, in terms of the range of nominees, has been very well represented. It could even be better represented in terms of things I feel like, but I think it's had a vastly good selection in terms of titles and authors that have been featured in this category before. I just want more people than Stephen King to win in terms of have a chance to win. That's my base complaint. That's my base complaint. But we're gonna move on to the next category, which is debut novel. This one I wasn't as invested in. I remember in terms of this when I saw the nominees. So Alchemized by Sin Lin Yu got 165,184 votes, which it's fanfic. I feel a certain type of way about it, but you know it is what it is. Um, and it blew away its competition in terms of things like the total votes for this category were 443,606 votes total, but the difference between first and second place, goodness. Alchemized got 165,184 votes, but the next one by Florence Knapp, The Names, only got 52,001 votes. So big gap. Big gap. I don't know. I have no idea, like, in terms of things. Like, this was kind of like a hodgepodge category in terms of debut, like, and usually it is. Usually it is, like, in terms of things. But to not spend too much time on this category, The Correspondent by Virginia Evans got third place with 49,050 votes. The Bright Years by Sarah Dama got 25,827 votes, and yeah, you can tell the drop off in terms of the number of votes between fourth place and third place, for sure, for sure. And then moving on, When the Tides Held the Moon. I love the cover of When the Tides Held the Moon. I'm kind of surprised it didn't even do better than what it did, but I haven't heard a lot about it. It got 25,645 votes. I am definitely planning on reading that. Based on the premise and like I said, I love the cover. A Resistance of Witches by Morgan Ryan got 23,502 votes. That got sixth place. Heather Amy O'Neill, The Irish Goodbye, got seventh place with 19,454 votes. Junie got eighth place with 16,369 votes. So that's pretty respectable in terms of things. But like I said in the previous category, I'm not surprised it did not do better in the other category that it was nominated for because of mixed opinions that people have talked about it, and having picked it up from my library and started going through it myself. Like, I understand the critiques of it, but I'm hoping to be able to finish that before the end of the year and get my thoughts about it. But moving on, Junie is also by Aaron Crosby Eckstein to note. But moving on, uh, ninth place, Homeseeking by Carissa Chen got 13,027 votes, and The Lilac People got 10th place, which is by Milo Todd, got 10th place with 12,897 votes. So that rounds out the top 10. And then we get into the ones that didn't make it past the first round. Finding Grace, I have not heard of this one, by Loretta Rothschild, 6,182 votes. Aftertaste, I have definitely heard of, and that is not my cup of tea, but it got 6,144 votes. I did not realize that was a debut this year. I did not realize, like, for some reason, I kept thinking it was a debut for some, or like written sometime last year, but made the window. But nah, I don't know. Like, this 2025 was felt like a long year in general in terms of things, but I know Aftertaste is not my cup of tea. But it didn't make it past the first round, but it got 6,144 votes. A Family Matter by Claire Lynch got 5,095 votes. I've not heard of that one, but it is a Reads with Jenna book. Loved One by Aisha Muhakar. Uh, got 4,972 votes. I've not heard of that one actually. Let me see this. When Julia's first love turned best friend, gay musician with a cultish following, dies unexpectedly at age 29, Julie launches herself into an intercontinental quest to recover the possessions he left with friends and acquaintances around the world. Oh, that's interesting. Hmm. Hmm. I'm gonna probably read what other people say about this one, but that does seem like an interesting premise. All right, next one is Woodworking by Emily St. James. I have not heard of this one. 4,437 votes. Then The Witch's Orchard. I've at least seen this cover. I have not heard anything about it. It got 3,537 votes. Moving on to The Eights by Joanna Miller. That I have not heard of. Got 2,990 votes. The Merge by Grace Walker, I have heard of. Got 2,764 votes. Dominion by Addie E. Chichens got 2,712 votes. And then rounding out the debut author category with 1,817 votes is The Original Daughter by Jemima Way. Excuse me. So that is the debut author category. We're going to move on to audiobook, which the audiobook category has been a hodgepodge for previous years. But the winner for favorite audiobook was Onyx Storm. I mean, I'm not surprised that Onyx Storm took another category. I just feel like audiobook is just such a random category. It's like you never know who's going to be nominated. You don't know who's going to be nominated for this one in terms of things. Onyx Storm won with 107,386 votes. The vote total on this one was 537,678 votes total. The narrators that were recognized for Onyx Storm, which I think favorite audiobook is recognizing the particular readers of an audiobook. So it would be Rebecca Soler, Teddy Hamilton, Justice Bolding, and Jasmine Walker. I recognize almost all of those names, and they do consistently good work in terms of the books that they nominate. So, good for them. Would I say that Onyx Storm was my favorite this year? Probably not. I would say probably not. Like in terms of there are certain audiobook narrators like that I've read this year that I feel would definitely qualify in this category, but because they're indie and because like their works are not as well recognized, they would probably not be nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards because of the popularity part, but which is a bummer. But it is what it is. We're gonna keep it moving. Let's see. The second place winner of this was Taylor Jenkins Reid's Atmosphere, so the audiobook narrators for that. Third place was Harry Potter, which, I think Jess Owens said it best in terms of things. We really did not need another Harry Potter narration edition. The other ones that exist were fine. Like, in terms of things, I don't talk about The Boy Wizard on my channel at all, like, in terms of things, and y'all know why. But, it just feels excessive and unnecessary, to be honest with you. So, moving on from that, Emily Henry's Great Big Beautiful Life got fourth place with 47,862 votes. And I think Julia Whalen does narrate that audiobook, and she consistently does a great job. I'm not surprised to see Emily Henry's book here nominated, if that's the case. If not, then I'll put a note on this. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Frederick Bachman's My Friends got fifth place with 39,179 votes. Apparently there was another Pride and Prejudice Audible original that was nominated for the audio version. I have not heard that one, but it got 36,389 votes. Tourist Season by Bryn Weaver got 28,393 votes. The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins got 8th place with 28,302 votes. Mel Robbins is pretty popular, so I'm not surprised to see the author here. Alchemist got 9th place with 27,063 votes, and then Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall got 10th place with 24,155 votes. And then we get into the ones that did not make it past the first category, which Kamala Harris's 107 Days. I am actually surprised that it did not do higher because of sheer name recognition and popularity, but it did get 11,015 votes in terms of things. So like there's a big gap between 10th place and 11th place, but it's only because I think since 107 Days did not make it past the first round, that's why that gap is there. Moving on to the next place, The Devils by Joe Abercrombie for the audiobook got 9,281 votes. Nobody's Girl. Okay. So I really think Virginia Roberts Guthrie deserved a lot more recognition in terms of things but For the audiobook, it got 8,281 votes. I'm surprised it did not do better than what it did in terms of things. I'm reading that now. I haven't quite finished it, but like I like the audiobook narration of this in terms of things, and I think it's a strong narrative. It's not an easy narrative to listen to, but I think the quality is there in terms of things, and I think the narrator does a great job. Moving on to the correspondent, by Virginia Evans, got 7,777 votes. S.A. Cosby's King of Ashes got 7,503 votes for the audiobook. We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter got 6,440 votes. And then rounding out the bottom four, let's see, Sister Wife by Christine Brown Woolley got 4,583 votes. Awake by Jen Hatmaker got 3,620 votes. 3,620 votes, excuse me. Tina Knowles, I'm surprised I didn't do better in terms of things. Like I said, name recognition, but they got 2,101 votes. And then next conversation by Jefferson Fisher got 1,244 votes. So that rounds up the audiobook category. This was a hodgepodge of a lot of different people. So yeah, I don't know. Like this is a category that like I wish I understood more of what the parameters were in terms of these particular books getting recognition over some others in terms of things, but it is what it is. I am happy that certain people did get recognized, like in terms of this one for things, but it, like I said, it's a hodgepodge category, which it's not immediately obvious in terms of like how the nominees get chosen there, and you know what the parameters are in terms of things. And this surprises me not at all. Sunrise on the Reaping won with a whopping 300,427 votes. I'm actually happy for this one. I called it. I said that it was probably going to win. Like, I know there were a lot of people who had mixed opinions about it in terms of stuff, but I like for Hamish's story, and it was way better, a much better reading experience than Snow's prequel to The Hunger Games, to be honest with you. So I was glad that it won. I was glad that it won, and it got first place. But you can tell that basically Sunrise on the Reaping trounced everybody else in this category. There was a total of 599,504 votes total. So pretty respectable showing up for white fantasy and sci-fi. But Fearless got second place with 65,594 votes. That's by Lauren Roberts. I think that's the third book in the Powerless trilogy. I have not even read the first one, so I can't speak to it. I'll probably try to see if I can read Powerless at some point. I don't know when that will be. Third place, I'm not surprised to see Rebel Witch did a very decent showing up by Kristen Cicerelli. 59,072 votes. That's, yeah, that makes sense to me in terms of how popular Rebel Witch is. Like, that makes sense to me. Okay, let's talk about Oakbound, y'all, for a second. Oakbound shouldn't even really be here. Nobody wants to hear me say that, but Oakbound should not be here. For the quality of the work, it should not be here. And there are probably going to be a lot of people who take issue with me saying that they're like, Rose, you know, black fantasy. I'm like, first of all, I'm going to stop you right there. Like, if you want a black a fantasy by a YA fantasy by a black author, that was way better than Oathbound. A Mastery of Monsters by Lucille Sandberg was right there. That book should have been here. That book should have been here over Oathbound, and I will not take any kind of arguments on that point. A master, like, I've read A Mastery of Monsters, and I'll probably talk about this more on my channel when I get to that review, and I'm going to do an individual video on it and also talk about it in my wrap up for my best of 2025, because hands down, that was one of the best YA fantasies I read this year. I gave it 4 stars. It's not a perfect narrative, but it was way better than Oathbound by a landslide. Like, you can't even compare. And I know there are going to be a lot of people who make comparisons because it like one like because Legendborn is one of the comparative titles that was cited, like in terms of a mastery of monsters, in terms of what it does, because it deals with August in terms of having to adapt this identity in order to find her missing brother, and while she's dealing with the her missing mother and like the way that it tore her family apart, like there's an aspect of grief and like systemic oppression and a lot of different things that Giselle Sandberry deals with in the heart of the text of that, but it is way better than what Tracy Dion did. Way better. I will not take any arguments to think like, and the other aspect of it is A Mastery of Monsters is the first in the series, so technically speaking, it's really not fair to compare it to a third book in the series. Like, if I'm doing juxtapositions, it would be like better to try to put A Mastery of Monsters in, like, you know, in comparatively speaking with Legendborn, since Legendborn is the first book in the series. But if you were talking about the quality of the book, but like in terms of the world building, in terms of the attention to the characters, in terms of the respect paid to its diverse cast, A Mastery of Monsters is way better than Oathbound. And I will fall on that hill. I will talk about it more in my review, as well as in a video, and also my best of list for 2025, but Oathbound should not be here. I I say that very strongly, and and like, y'all know how I reacted to Oathbound in terms of things, in terms of my written review as well as my video review. Like, for a third book in a series, like, it should not have dropped the ball that hard in terms of things like Bree. By book 3 in any respective series, you would think you would see the growth of a character in a much bigger and better place than where they started at the beginning of the series. But it's been a downhill slide since book 1. It's been a downhill slide since book 1. And I don't know what the fourth book or even fifth book is going to do for the respective Legendborn cycle, but I think I think there are better penned black fantasies out there, and I think more people need to recognize that in terms of things. It shouldn't just be a name recognition thing, and like the way that that book just dropped the ball on so many different levels, on so many different aspects. I can't I can't see how it would merit a place here. I really don't. I think there are better books. I think there are better books than Earthbound, and that I'll leave it there. And that is a hill that I would very much recommend A Mastery of Monsters by Giselle Sandberry, because that was a book that impressed me this year, and I wish it had more recognition than it did. Moving on, Tara Mafi's Watch Me, which is part of the Shatter Me series. Like, I think I had said this in my previous video, like, the Shatter Me series is not my cup of tea. I wish that Tara Mafi's other series had actually made the top 10, but it's well known, and it's been around for a while. And I think the Shatter Me series, like, this is the offshoot start to the Shatter Me series, if I remember correctly. So it's the first book in the spin-off series, but it got 28,370 votes. Our Infinite Fates got sixth place by Laura Steven with 18,354 votes. C.G. Drew's Hazelthorn got 17,522 votes. And you can tell the vote totals are of this really drop off after the first three. Even Oathbound only got 30,594 votes compared to Rebel Witch, Fearless, and of course Rise on the Reaping. But when we get into selections 5 through 8, like the vote total goes with Terra Mafia's one is 28,370. Our Infinite Fates, Lore Steel even 18,354. Hazel Thorn, CG Drew 17,522. And Allison Saf's Wings of Starlight got 17,166 votes. So that's top 8. And then ninth place was The Rose Bargain by Sasha Pete Smith, 13,551 votes. That one is not one that I've heard of, honestly. I may read reviews to see whether or not I pick it up, but it is the first book in a series evidently called The Rose Bargain. And then 10th place was Heavenly Tyrant by Zhang J. Zhao. And Heavenly Tyrant got 11,990 votes, so that rounds out the top 10 for YA sci-fi and fantasy. So a lot of fantasy representation, not so much sci-fi, which is unfortunate, but you know, that's another rant that I'll go on later in terms of how much there is fantasy representation here, but not as much sci-fi representation usually in this category, which is a bummer. In terms of things. But moving on to the selections that did not make it past the first round, let's see, Nikita Gill, Hecate the Witch got 5,805 votes. That one is part of the Goddesses of the Underworld series, which I have not heard of. It is the reimagining of Greek myth for fans of Circe and lore. I might actually read that one. Like, I'm not too much of a fan of the actual cover, but the premise has me, so I might try that. And of course, Goodreads wants to bug out on me for whatever reason. I have no idea why. Moving on, Immortal Consequences by L.V. Marie got 4,676 votes. That one I've not heard of. Terra Mafia's other series, this is the one that I was talking about. I'm kind of surprised that the fourth book of the Swollen Kingdom is actually falling behind like the Shatter Me series. I'm kind of sad that it didn't make it to the top 10, but Every Spiral of Fate, which is the fourth book in this series, got 4,529 votes. It's pretty covered too. And I have it on my TBR list, so I will probably read that respective series and give my thoughts about it once I have the opportunity to be able to get to it. Unfortunately, I have not, but I'll try. I'll give it a try. A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson, which is the first in a series, got 4,199 votes. I do like that cover, though. I really do. I might see what other people say about it before I add it to my TBR, though. The Floating World by Axie O, which I'm very familiar with Axie O. This is the first in a series of the same name. Got 3,497 votes. Slulin Tan, who I'm familiar with as well, Never Ever After, got 3,458 votes. I don't know, is this... Yeah, this is the first in the series. Okay. Yeah, Daughter of the Moon Goddess. It is already on my TBR. Marissa Meyer, very familiar with that author, has... Let's see, is this a new series or a new... It looks like a standalone and not a series. It's the tale of Bluebeard as a romantasy murder mystery. It got 3,233 votes. The cover is nice, at least, like in terms of things, but I haven't heard much about it. Elizabeth Lem's Forgery of Fate got 2,900 votes. The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor got 2,806 votes. And lastly, for rounding out the nominees in the first round that didn't make it but were nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards, was Breath of the Dragon by Shannon Lee and Fonda Lee, which I am very, very surprised that Breath of the Dragon, as cool of a cover as that is, that didn't get more votes. I had said before that, like, I wanted to read this one because I like the cover and like the premise of it, but I'm kind of sad that this first book in a YA fantasy duology didn't get more acclaim. And I am planning on reading it. Is like, so Shannon Lee is the daughter of Bruce Lee, and Fonda Lee is the not related author of the Green Bone Saga, if y'all know. So, but that looks like an extremely cool series. I'm like, I would have thought it had more votes. But I'm definitely planning on reading it. Let's move on to young adult fiction. I am still very, very surprised that Fate Skating by Lynn Painter, of all the nominees, won this one. This is probably the only one that I'm really disappointed by, like greatly disappointed. Understatement. But in some ways, I kind of like I try to see, like, why somebody might have won with this one. It got 46,319 votes, which that's pretty low for one of the winners, and really 310,583 votes total in this. That's lower than some of the other categories in terms of the voting spread. I wouldn't be surprised with the popularity of hockey romance as well as other things. That's probably why this won. But even then, I'm like, there were other people who could have won this category this year in terms of things. I think other than Lynn Painter in terms of things. Uh, yeah, it is what it is. But that's just my personal opinion. Um, Second place for this was Jennifer Lynn Barnes' Glorious Rivals. I'm not surprised that it got second place, given the popularity of the Inheritance Cycle series. I wanted other people to be able to have a chance to win, but like it is a popular series. It got 33,821 votes. And this is the second book in the Grandest Game series. To note. And Jennifer Lynn Barnes has been in the industry for a long time in terms of things. I've read her before. I've read her before in terms of some of her other work. It's just the Inheritance Cycle just never really appealed to me in terms of things. I know it is popular with some teen audiences, and even past other like in like the adult space as well, like for adults who read YA as also. But yeah. Dating and Dragons. This is an interesting like series to me, like, and this is one that I definitely want to read. I have not read the first book in the Dungeons and Drama series, but Dating and Dragons is the second book in the Dungeons and Drama series, and it's by Christy Boyce. That got third place with 28,917 votes. Like I said, these are relatively lower vote totals than some of the other categories in the Goodreads Choice Awards in terms of things. And like I said, maybe possibly like in terms of the way that this ended up leaning, like it's based on the people who voted for it here in terms of things. I don't know necessarily know if these are the best representation of what YA general literature is in terms of things, because I could tell you like a number of different YA titles that probably should have been here that didn't have as many ads and didn't even get nominated in this category. But that's a rant for another day. That's a rant for another day. Just because of how familiar I am with, like, like YA, like in terms of things and some of the releases that come out every year. Moving on. Fourth place, Falling Like Leaves by Misty Wilson. This is one that I did hear about before, and like I've seen like people talk about it. It got fourth place with 28,799 votes. E. Lockhart has been in the YA space for a long time. Got fifth place with We Fell Apart, which is a sequel to We Were Liars. It's not a prequel, it's a sequel if I remember correctly. That is one that I got as an ARC. I am planning on reading it, but I do need to reread We Were Liars because it has been a while. But it got 28,784 votes. I am very surprised that Adam Silvera did not finish higher than what this series of books has done in terms of things, in terms of how people have talked about it, and then also seeing how teens have reached for it. But The Survivor Wants to Die at the End by Adam Silvera, I think, is a sequel to They Both Die at the End. And it did finish a respectable sixth place with 23,177 votes. I'm just surprised that it didn't finish even higher than what it did. I am very glad to see I Am Not Jessica Chen got seventh place with 22,758 votes. Yeah, I started reading I Am Not Jessica Chen by Anne Liang shortly, like around the time that the finalists were nominated. I have not finished that one yet, but I am very close. I have it on audiobook, and I hope to probably finish reading that within the next couple of days and be able to give my thoughts about it. But it is a very good book. It is one that I would recommend. Like, based on how far I've gotten into it at this point, I would recommend that one. I'm also kind of surprised that it didn't finish higher than what it did. Then there's Nobody in Particular in eighth place by Sophie Gonzalez with 20,022 votes. I have not read that one, but that is on my TBR. You Found Oliver, which is the follow-up to You Reach Sam by Dustin Tao, got 16,127 votes. Respectable ninth place. I do not agree with Julie Soto, the Thrashers, getting 10th place with 16,025 votes. I'm like, what? Why? I don't understand. And Sisters of the Wind by Angeline Boley missed missed being in the final round. It got like just like, I don't know how the vote totals, but the vote totals spread between the Thrashers by Julie Soto and Angeline Boley, which Angeline Boley deserves better than that, way better than that. Sisters in the Wind got 7,056 votes. That was the one that I wanted to vote for in the second round, and it didn't make it into the second round. And I'm so bummed. I'm so bummed. Like, Julie should not be. I'm sorry. I'm just really disappointed in terms of things, especially with how good Firekeeper's Daughter was. And I have not read her Warrior Girl Unearthed yet, but I'm planning on reading that one in full. But I'm just like, I, I think Angeline Boley deserves a lot better than that. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I could say about that, but let me leave it there and not make this video even longer than what it already is. We'll move on. But in terms of the other picks that didn't make it past the first round but were nominated, and they were Roommates by Paige Powers. This is one that I have not heard of, but it got 6,459 votes. This is a second chance romance about the most unlikely gay roommate mishap, perfect for fans of Casey McQuiston and Gwen and Art Are Not in Love. I might actually look into reviews on that one before I put it on my TBR, like, because I am curious in terms of like how the romance develops in that one and what that one's about. But moving on, Libba Bray. I did not. So here's the thing. I did not know Libba Bray had any book released this year until much later, and Libba Bray has been in the YA space for a long time, like long time. Like, and I've talked to about her before in terms of her penning some of my favorite offerings in this age group. But I did not know she had a release this year. And I wonder about the promo about it. It's like Under the Same Stars. is one that is on my TBR. I am curious to see like what it's about in terms of things. It talks about 1940s and 1980s Germany, as well as spring 2020 in New York City in turn like, so it goes through different time periods. And it's got a pretty decent average rating, like, but it just doesn't have as many ratings as some of the other books on this list. But I'm curious to see what she did with that. Like, I'm kind of sad it didn't make it past the first round, but I am planning on reading it. Then this is one that I have not heard of. When Devils Sing by Jean Carr. Got 5,432 votes. Um, Anticipated horror novel. This, yeah, like I said, this is one that I have not heard of, and it was blurred by Andrew Joseph White. Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm gonna put that on my to read list. Okay. All right, moving on. Tiffany D. Jackson. So I think I've talked about it in one of my previous videos in terms of things. I was on the fence about Tiffany D. Jackson's The Scammer in terms of whether or not I would read it. And I figured, like, since it did not make it past the first round, I said in my mind, okay, I'm probably not going to read this. But then when I heard more about what it was about and how it diverges away from the original story that it's based on, one, two, what it chooses to do with certain characters in terms of things and the way that it's characterized, even though that it takes place on an HBCU, and just essentially how that story and what people have said about it. I was like, no, I think I'm gonna skip that one. I'm gonna skip Tiffany D. Jackson's Scammer. I don't want to put myself through that experience in terms of things when I know it's not gonna be the story that, like, the story like an accurately represented story in terms of stuff that respects the agency of the characters that are within it and vilifies essentially the black boy that's in it. In terms of things, I was like, I don't want to read that. I really don't. And I went on a rant about it in terms of books that I will never read in terms of things. For some reason, I kept thinking that it was called The Pledge, but it's called The Scammer. And if you know the original story behind The Scammer, it is actually does not take place in a HBCU. It's actually at a PWI, primary white institution, involving white students who were conned by a trusted adult in terms of things, who abused them and manipulated them in terms of things. And it's a tough story. It's a tough story if you read the original, and also, like, I think there may be a documentary about it that talks about the case as well in terms of and things. But it's a tough story. It's a tough story. But the other thing about The Scammer that I heard about that also frustrated me, and also was one of the factors where I'm like, I'm not putting myself through it. The premise of it, like the event that happens in terms of the premise of it, does not get addressed until more than 70% into the novel. So that was another reason why I was just like, I don't want to read 70% into a novel to get to the inciting event that's described on the blurb. That is way too long to make a person wait to get to the heart of a respective story in terms of being able to unpack it, and then also being able to unpack it in a way that is responsible and um illustrates is a respective story, like in a respectful way. I'm just like, no, I'm good with that. All right, moving on. That The Scammer got 5,187 votes. It didn't make it past the first round. Tia Williams's Audrey and Bass are just friends. Okay, this one I can actually talk about because I did read this earlier this year, and I can talk about. I don't think I have talked about it on the channel yet before. I am planning on talking about it in a review on the channel, and also, like, writing a proper review for it. But Audrey and Bash is a weird title for the very specific reason that it is a young adult sequel to an adult book. That is not something that commonly happens in terms of things, and that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people are saying that, like, adults are kind of like taking over the YA space in terms of things. Like, it's not necessarily putting the teens first, uh for things. It's putting the adults first, and like writing YA to adult audiences. Audrey and Bash is one of those ones where I was like, okay, I can tell that this is a YA that is penned for an adult audience, and it does not fit. It definitely does not fit with the teen audience. It's not that teens can't read it, but there's a very clear disconnect in terms of things. And when I sat down and read Audrey and Bash, I was like, I can see the disconnect of this between an adult audience and what a teen will pick up from it. I'm not saying that the themes on it and certain aspects of it wouldn't appeal to teens. There are certain things about it that do, but it feels very misplaced in the YA for what that title chose to do in terms of things. And like, and I had kind of that concern going in. And it's not that Tia Williams hasn't written YA before. She absolutely has. And like, I could talk about that more in the Audrey and Bash review video when I have the opportunity to do so and have more time to unpack it. But this book felt so like, misaligned with, like, like being able to identify with its respective issues and being able to address a teen audience, that I was just like, I don't know how this is going to land, and I don't think it's going to connect as well as people think that it will. And the other aspect of it is, and I'll give you an example of where this has worked versus where I knew Tia Williams's work would not work in the reverse, where like it's based on a work that was adult going to YA. The Sweet Valley Twins series, Sweet Valley High specifically, had a range. Like, Francine Pascal is, go in terms of the young adult, middle grade, like in children's space, kidlit space. And like, people have known her name for years. Like, she recently passed away. But Francine Pascal wrote like the Sweet Valley like High series, and that started off as YA. It later branched out to other series that were both younger than it and older than it. Like, it went to the Sweet Valley Twin series, which covered Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield when they were in middle school. And and there was also Sweet Valley High senior year, which is the series that I came up with as a teenager, that followed Jessica and Elizabeth like as they went into their senior year. There was Sweet Valley University, which that was geared towards a young adult audience, but it followed Jessica and Elizabeth in their college years. And then later on, we had Sweet Valley Confidential, which followed Jessica and Elizabeth as adults. So that was a wide ranging series for what it did, but it was still audience specific, and it recognized its audience very well and put its audience at the forefront in terms of things, especially like being in the kidlit space, in terms of being, like for kids, middle grade and YA. Like, Sweet Valley and Francine Pascal knew the audience. Tia Williams trying to do kind of like this retrospective in terms of things, and it follows the daughter of the main couple. It follows Audrey, who is the daughter of the main couple of 7 Days in June. And I knew, like, going in terms of things, based on the language that it's written as, and what certain things would appeal to a teen audience versus some that would appeal to adults. It did not stick the landing in terms of being able to appeal to its respective audience in terms of things. And that was the biggest complaint I had about that book. So I am not surprised, long story short, that Audrey and Bash are just friends did not make it past the first round of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that is my spiel. I'll talk about it more in my review, but I want to kind of like clear that up in terms of things why like that just did not stick the landing with its respective audience. I think it could have been a lot stronger. And I think it also could have been a lot more tailored to teens specifically rather than trying to make it a YA that appeals to adults and trying to just say, oh, teens can read it, but it's YA for adults. Like it does not respect teens as being the primary audience for that book, is what I'm saying. And that was a part of the disconnect that happened with that. But we'll talk about it in a separate thing. I'll talk about it in my review, and I'll talk about it in my review video as well. Moving on. A First Time for Everything by K.L. Waltner got 3,703 votes. Needy Little Things. This was one that I have heard about, but I haven't heard too many people say that they finished it. I've heard people say that they were picking it up but not finish it. I am planning on reading it myself, though. It got 3,143 votes. All right, rounding out the bottom two of the YA category, Jennivora's Say a Little Prayer got 2,691 votes. That one I have not heard of. And then Wish You Were Here. That one I actually have heard of, by Ellie McNichol, got 1,953 votes. So there was, yeah, there are some that I can understand didn't make the first round and going to the second, but I just feel like there's a lot more range to young adults that isn't being represented by this respective category in terms of things. I think I can understand the popularity of some of these and why some of these are on here. And some of them, like, I definitely, like, know how popular they are, like, in terms of things. Adam Silvera's, They Both Die at the End is a popular series in YA, for example. And like some of these, I'm definitely glad they made it into the final round and place where they did. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like there could be better range and better representation in this category rather than just the um titles that appeal to adults in terms of things, and also like different categories of YA um being represented in terms of things like this is just a small piece of a lot of YA that is being released right now in terms of things, and it doesn't completely show the range of what's being offered to YA. Like YA is a big space, and it deserves to be um better represented in terms of like some of the offerings that it has in terms of stuff. I don't think the Goodreads Choice Awards reflects that. Long story short. Long story short, and that's probably a rant for another day, but we're going to keep it moving and go into nonfiction. All right, for readers' favorite nonfiction, I'm actually not surprised to see that John Green won this one. Everything is Tuberculosis. I actually wanted it to be, and let me see uh, if she was nominated on this one. No, she wasn't nominated on this one. I'm thinking of Virginia Guffrey. No, like it like so I will say like I know exactly who I wanted to win for this category. I wanted it to be One Day Everyone Will. I've always been against this. It got a respectable third place to this one, but John Green won with 114,142 votes. The vote total for this category was 386,194 votes total. I'm not surprised, because John Green is a popular author, and a lot of people actually really gravitated towards Everything is Tuberculosis versus I think his other one, which people like were more divided on his other book than Everything is Tuberculosis. So I'm trying to decide whether or not I should put that on my TBR just to try it, because John Green's work is hit and miss with me in general. I may read more people in terms of what they say about it, and probably add it to my TBR later. Like if I have the opportunity to pick it up, it's probably not going to be this year. It's probably not going to be this year, but it may be something that I look into for 2026. Mel Robbins got second place. I'm kind of surprised that Mel Robbins finished as high. Not in terms of the fact that that Mel Robbins isn't popular, but just for this particular title, the Let Them Theory is called a life-changing tool that millions of people can't stop talking about. And I've read from Mel Robbins before, like some of the author's other work, but I'm kind of surprised that it finished with 78,705 votes. Like that's high. That's but it is what it is. Moving on, third place. Like I said, one day everyone will have always been against us. I am very, very glad that that won the National Book Award. I think it should have won the Goodreads Choice Awards as well. But you know, third place is not bad. It got 35,077 votes. Um, and you can tell the discrepancy between the top three in terms of like the vote totals, but for it to get third place, and I think I said this last year about the message as well by Ta-Nehisi Coates, that third place is not bad. Like that's respectable. Pat on the back. Like, you know, I want to be I want to be able to recommend more people read this in terms of the things that are happening in Gaza, in Palestine, to Palestinians, and a lot of the things that have been happening like in the region in terms of things that and directly um addressing the genocide in terms of things. I think more people do need to read, like, and um Omar El Akkad is like did such a phenomenal job. Like I'm reading the audiobook right now. I'm close to finishing it now. By the time that this video comes up, I'll probably be completely done with it, and will be able to give my thoughts about it. But it is a phenomenal book, and I think people should read it. I think people need to absolutely read it. Like highly recommend. And really, like I'll probably like have more to say about it when I do some of my reading wrap ups and do a review for the book. But it is very strong read. Moving on to fourth place, The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. That got 24,579 votes. That, let's see, the tagline to that is Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. Talking about gratitude, reciprocity, and community. That one I might just be able to like look at more reviews and be able to see how it was received. Because I haven't heard that much about it, but it did very respectively for fourth place. That's cool. And then Girl on Girl came in fifth place. How pop culture turned a generation of women against themselves. I am planning on reading it. It's by Sophie Gilbert. It got 19,691 votes. The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates. How AI and emerging technologies are reinventing misogyny. That got 17,815 votes. The Idaho 4, An American Tragedy by James Patterson and Vicky Ward. Like I said, I have not heard too much about like James Patterson releasing stuff, but he's still very much in this industry. Got 17,794 votes. That got seventh place. Murderland by Caroline Fraser, Crime and Bloodlust in the Time of Serial Killers, got eighth place with 16,313 votes. Johnson and Johnson, the No More Tears: The Dark Secrets of Johnson and Johnson by Gardner Harris, got 13,176 votes. I am planning on reading that. And then Abundance by Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson got 11,361 votes. And then when we get to the ones that didn't make it past the first round, but were nominated, The Book of Alchemy, A Creative Practice for an Inspired Life by Sulika Jaquad, got 5,392 votes. I am planning on reading that, especially as a creative myself. Enshittification by Cory Doctorow. I was surprised that this didn't make it past the first round, considering how popular of an author Cory Doctorow is, but it got 5,282 votes. And Monty Perry, this one I'm also surprised that it did not make it past the first round. It got 4,800 votes. It's Black and Blues. How a Color Tells the Story of My People. I have that as a library read, and I'll probably give a review of that. If it's not by the end of this year, it'll probably be going into 2026. But I have the physical copy of that from my library. Are You Mad at Me by Meg Josephson. Got 4,675 votes. After that is A River Alive by Robert McFarland. Got 4,146 votes. I haven't heard too much about that. You Didn't Hear This From Me, Mostly True Notes on Gossip by Kelsey McKinney. Got 4,031 votes. That is not one that I've heard of either. Replaceable You by Mary Roach. I have heard of Adventures in Human Anatomy. Just because of my background, I've heard of that. But it got 3,155 votes. Mary Roach is the author of Fuzz and Stuff. If you've heard of what Mary has written before in terms of things. I know that's going to be an interesting read, and it is on my TBR to be able to read for myself and give my thoughts. I don't know when I'm going to pick it up, but I am interested in reading that. Then there's the Fort Bragg Cartel, Drug Trafficking and Murder in the Special Forces by Seth Hart. That got 2,414 votes. I'm actually probably going to read that, so let me add that to my TBR as well. Hopefully Goodreads does not bug out on me. Hopefully. And then rounding out the final two with 1,958 votes, The Five Types of Wealth by Sohail Bloom. I think it's let's see, a transformative guide to designing your dream life. And then The Tragedy of True Crime, Four Guilty Men and Stories That Define Us by John J. Lennon got 1,688 votes to round out nonfiction. So we're going to go ahead and move on to memoir. And we should be getting close to the end on this by now. Let's see. So we only have, I think, a couple more categories to go through. So for reader's favorite memoir, I'm not surprised to see that The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom won this one. I knew it was probably going to be close. It got 57,544 votes, and this is by Sherry Frank. The total number of votes in this category was 372,532 votes total. And to look at some of the other nominees here, Malala Yousafzai, very popular. Malala is very popular in terms of an author. Finding My Way was released this year, got 44,413 votes. I'm actually not surprised at that. I probably would have figured Malala would be in the top three. I had voted for Nobody's Girl by Virginia Guffey. That got a respectable third place with 42,903 votes. I'm close to finishing that now. I'll probably have that read by the time that this video goes up. It is a heartbreaking read. It is not an easy read, but it is very well done, and it saddens me that Virginia Guffey passed way too soon. And her story is a rough read, but it's definitely worth picking up this book. It's like, just take your time with it. It's not an easy read, and I can say, like, The House of My Mother is also one that I'm reading right now, and that is not an easy read either in terms of things. But in terms of the top three, that's a pretty solid top three. I am surprised Jeremy Renner got fourth place with 39,067 votes. I thought other people probably would have finished higher than him in terms of things. Especially the fact that Tim Curry had a memoir out this year. In terms of things, I would have thought Tim Curry would have been in the top four. But it's what it is. Moving on to fifth place is 107 Days by Kamala Harris. Got 37,540 votes. I'm not surprised that it finished in the top 10. It like that's like this place is a pretty respectable finish, and given its popularity, I'm not surprised to see it at fifth place. Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. I also voted for that as well, which it's weird because had voted for Nobody's Girl in the second round, and I've voted for Careless People in the first round, and it's weird that it reflected my first round pick over my second round pick, but you know, Goodreads being Goodreads is what it is. Both like Careless People was a strong read. Like I recommend that one as well for people to read. It got 27,703 votes and got respectable sixth place. Seventh place is Share the Memoir Part 1, which had 24,889 votes. Tim Curry got eighth place with Vagabond. I enjoy that Vagabond in terms of things. Tim Curry is Tim Curry. He has a very so many very interesting things to say, like in his memoir, in terms of his experiences and stuff like that. And I'll leave it at that. I'll probably leave that for my more comprehensive review in terms of talking about it. But it got eighth place with 19,760 votes. I would have thought that Tim Curry would have been like fourth place over Jeremy Renner. I mean, I know it's hard to tell in terms of like, you know, like in terms of what celebrity memoirs and books appeal to certain people, and also the demographic in terms of who picks up what in terms of things. But considering Tim Curry has had the career that he's had for the longest time, like, and I grew up with a lot of his work, like in terms of things, like I grew up as a millennial where Tim Curry had been a lot of iconic roles in children's media as well as voice acting work in terms of things like a lot of people know him for Rocky Horror Picture Show and some of his previous work in terms of things, but like I grew up in that era where he was doing a lot of children's media. Muppet Treasure Island was one of my favorite movies to watch when I was growing up as well. So like in terms of things, Tim Curry for me had a lot more like, you know, range in terms of like being able to follow his work and say I know his name, I know his face, I know the work that he has done in terms of things. And so when it was announced that he had a memoir coming out, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely prioritizing reading this. But yeah, you never know. You never know how things are gonna what's gonna appeal what doesn't considering these kind of contests, but it is what it is. All right, so for ninth place, Semi Well Adjusted by Alison Stoner got ninth place with 18,992 votes, and then Big Dumb Eyes by Nate Barr got 17,689 votes. I think like in the tagline, stories from a simpler mind. I have not heard about this one, but he is a stand-up comic from what I understand. Moving on to the books the memoirs that did not make it past the first round but were nominated. Raising Hair by Chloe Dalton got 7,750 votes. That one I have not heard about. Awake by Jen Hatmaker got 5,641 votes. That's also a memoir. Memorial Days by Geraldine Brooks got 5,342 votes, followed by The Tell, which was an Oprah's book club pick by Amy Griffin, got 5,300 votes. Elizabeth Gilbert's All the Way to the River. How that was nominated, I have no idea. Maybe just on name alone, but the controversies that I have heard about that book pretty much ensured me that it was not going to be my cup of tea, and I'm definitely not going to be reading that. It got 5,032 votes. Let's see. Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy got 4,315 votes, and I'm definitely planning on reading that. It looks interesting from what I've read about it. I am surprised that Tina Knowles' Matriarch did not do better than what its respective vote total was, but it got 3,310 votes. I just not had the time to be able to read it like in terms of things. I knew it was releasing this year, but I did not have the opportunity to pick it up. And also, it was like, I think there's like a double digit waiting line at my library for it, so I'm probably not going to be able to get to it for a while, unfortunately. But when it is available, I will definitely be reading that. Followed by Paper Girl by Beth Macy, a memoir of home and family, and a fractured America fractured America. That got 2,471 votes. Things in Nature Merely Grow by Yin Yin Lee got 2,156 votes. And then Joyride by Susan Orlean got 715 votes. I'm kind of surprised at that, especially with, like, because I know who Susan Orlean is in terms of things, in terms of like the author's other work, but I'm kind of surprised it did not get more than that. Was the best one of this year? Hard to say. In terms of things, but I would have thought it would have done better than that. Having been nominated. But we're gonna move on to which I think is the last category in the Goodreads Choice Awards, which is history and biography. So the winner of this one was How to Kill a Witch: This Patriarchy's Guide to Silencing Women by Claire Mitchell and Joe Ventizzotti. Vendizzati. It got 45,858 votes. And this was one of the ones where like it was an overall lower vote total. Actually, let me go back to Memoir really quickly just to see like in terms of things, because I think there was more voting in Memoir than history and biography. Yeah, there was way more votes in history and biography. Uh, Way more votes in Memoir than there were in history and biography. There was 372,532 votes total in Memoir, whereas history and biography was only 200,000 something, which it's interesting to see the overall vote totals in some of these. But How to Kill a Witch won with 45,858 votes. The second place winner was Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. Had 28,598 votes. Sisters in Science by Olivia Campbell. How Four Women Physicists Escaped Nazi Germany and Made Scientific History got 28,524 votes. That's not, yeah, that is a very close vote total for between Jane Austen's Bookshelf and Sisters in Science. Goodness, very close. Very, very close. And but both of them finished under How to Kill a Witch. Then Baldwin got 19,929 votes. That was my choice for both rounds. I am planning on reading that. I have not, like, I've tried, I put it on hold from my library, but it has not been delivered to me yet. So, like, as soon as I can pick it up, I will read it. As soon as I can pick it up, I will read it. Moving on to fifth place, Propaganda Girls by Lisa Rogak. 16,840 votes. The Secret War of the Women in the OSS. And then there's Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. 16,298 votes. 14,612 votes for Marriage at Sea by Sophie Elmhurst. The Cure for Women, the Dr. Mary Putnam Jacoby and the Challenge to Victorian Medicine that Changed Women's Lives Forever by Lydia Reeder got 13,606 votes and made it to 8th place. Let's see, the JFK Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Kennedy and Why It Failed got 13,227 votes and got into 9th place, which I'm not surprised to see it up here in terms of how popular it is that Kennedy's assassination gets in terms of this respective space for history and biography. And then lastly, rounding out the top 10, Original Sins by Eve L. Ewing got 12,303 votes. And then we get into the first round picks that were nominated but didn't make it into the final round. There was 1929, Inside the Greatest Crash in Wall Street History and How It Shattered the Nation by Andrew Ross Sorkin. That got 4,324 votes. A Flower Traveled in My Blood by Haley Cohen Gilliland got 4,230 votes. This one I have not heard of, actually. The Incredible True Story of the Grandmothers Who Fought to Find a Stolen Generation of Children. I am going to put that on my list because I have not, I haven't read that one. And I have not read 1929. Let me put that on my list as well. Because I am interested in terms of stuff relating to the Great Depression as well. All right. We the People by Jill Lepore got 3,758 votes. A History of the U.S. Constitution. Lorne, which is about Lorne Michaels and Saturday Night Live. I'm not really interested in that, but it got 3,522 votes. This is, let's see, The Zorg, A Tale of Greed and Murder that inspired the abolition of slavery by Siddharth Kara got 3,272 votes. That is already on my TBR. I am interested and curious about what that has to say. Let's see, Garrett M. Graff's The Devil Reached Towards the Sky, an oral history of the making and unleashing of the atomic bomb got 2,149 votes. Rick Atkinson's The Fate of the Day. The War for America for Ticonderoga to Charleston, 1777 to 1780. It is part of the Revolution trilogy, apparently. Like, it's the second book in that series. It got 2,010 votes. I have not heard of that one. Realm of Ice and Sky by Buddy Levy. Triumph, Tragedy, and History's Greatest Arctic Rescue got 1,999 votes. I'll actually add that to my list because I'm curious. I'm very, very curious. Dark Renaissance. The Dangerous Times and Fatal Genius of Shakespeare's Greatest Rival got 1,700 votes. And then lastly, King of Kings by Scott Anderson. The Iranian Revolution, A Story Hubris, Delusion, and Catastrophic Miscalculation got 1,161 votes. I don't know too much about this one. I will look at reviews on that one to see if I have the opportunity to be able to pick that up. I'll pick it up. But yeah, this rounds out the Goodreads Choice Awards, which, oh boy, that's very, like, I'm not too surprised. It's not that like there were too many surprises in here, but it was very much a standard Choice Awards in terms of things. There wasn't anything in terms of this being a particularly standout year for some of the things. Not that I'm knocking the winners. I'm actually glad to see some of the winners who were here for this among the ones that I read, and then also being able to see how highly some of the nominees placed through each of these categories. But I'm just like, Goodreads took away a lot of the categories that a lot of very interesting categories, and made choices that were baffling in terms of having multiple people nominated for the same category. It just kind of uh really didn't showcase a lot of the range for a lot of these categories that it could have, I feel like. And I feel like that's the universal complaint for a lot of people who are watching or talking about the Goodreads Choice Awards in retrospect in terms of things, and who ends up winning, who ends up not making it, what ends up being represented, and what doesn't. But I am genuinely happy to see some of these winners, and I'm definitely planning on adding them to my TBR if they're not already on my TBR to be able to read, or at least just being able to see what people think about them. And I think that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to some of these like choice awards in terms of things, to be able to see what people read, why they pick up what they read, and how they think about the books that are popular, or like get recommend recognition, and like being able to go deeper in terms of discussions surrounding these books and in terms of what people think about them and stuff. So yeah, I'll keep coming back. I just wish that they would be, I just wish that the Goodreads Choice Awards would be more reflective of a lot of the genres that are out there and a lot of the selections that are out there in terms of things. It is not just one monolith of authors or representation of a specific background, stuff like that. It is way more encompassing than that. And the Goodreads Choice Awards really don't reflect that very like the multitudes of range that are out there in terms of the book, in terms of the literary world. And I want, I want that to be better reflected in like, you know, awards, like choice awards that uh are supposed to reflect what people read, and not just from one community, but a multitude of communities in terms of things. And I think that could be better represented. I think that could be better represented, especially in terms of things. I miss middle grade. Like, there's been no year that I've missed being able to see the poetry recommendations or the middle grade recommendations or the children's ones or the comics ones that I have this year in terms of things. Like, you can feel the absence of that in this awards, like things like I definitely feel it. I definitely feel it because like I really wanted to be able, even if it's not a genre or an age group that I read as much, comparatively speaking, as some of the others, I still want to be able to see what people are excited about and what people want to pick up in terms of these respective categories. So I want Goodreads to bring them back. If they have like a suggestion box or something like that, I'm just like, bring back these categories, please, in terms of things, and just implement better parameters in terms of things, like, so that like there are more opportunities for people who are not recognized as readily. Like, we know who Stephen King is, we know who Brandon Sanderson is in terms of stuff. Give people the opportunity to be able to discover more authors and more books to be able to pick up. Like, that's really all I'm saying, like, in terms of things. And I think that's what a lot of people want. And that's what I think that's what a lot of people expect, like, from some of these, like, you know, like these choice awards, in terms of things, being able to see, you know, more pick up more people that they may not be familiar with, and that write great books, and books that are awesome to be able to talk about. I think that at its core is what a lot of us really really want. So I will leave it there for this video. I probably won't do like an end cap. Like, I'll probably do an introduction to this, but I probably won't do an end cap um follow up for this. But these are my thoughts for the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2025. I like, if they have them next year, I will definitely be here, just because I'm curious. I'm always curious. I'm curious. I'm curious in general in terms of seeing what people read and how they think about the things that are nominated in terms of things. But if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video. Bye, y'all.